When I was in like middle school or high school, I used to be absolutely obsessed with these little Flash MMOs like Club Penguin and Animal Jam and Movie Star Planet and Fantage and whatever it was, like you name it. And I had an account on it, and they were probably some of the stupidest, edgiest names you could think of, because obviously I thought I was deep as a kid that went through divorce. Lots of my nostalgia comes from me getting home from a long, degrading day of middle school, ditching my homework off to the side, and immediately getting onto my mom's laptop to distract myself. Being a bored kid, I'd find myself watching music videos based off of these games made by other bored kids. Like, they would have, like, oh my god, they'd have things like Kesha and, you know, Ariana Grande and Lana Del Rey. Oh my god. The grip that Lana Del Rey had on me. I can't. Some were made with, like, you know, the Windows Movie Makers with like, the rainbow transition and the spinning and whatever, and had like the simplest drag and drop concepts like known to man, and it was really easy. So a lot of kids got their hands on it. But like, through my board expeditions, I found that some kids had videos with these like amazing music videos, like with this amazing editing, at least for like, you know, like 2013 standards, you know. They would have like these bright colors and brilliant effects and these like transitions that were like literally so smooth, like smooth as butter. And I was addicted to them, watching them for hours at a time until my brain rotted or until my mom turned off the Wi-Fi because I didn't do my homework for like the second week in a row. I would get into these videos, right, and I'd spam the comments asking what the software was because, you know, I obviously thought since I was a kind of little dumb kid, I thought it was like just one software. I'm like, it can't be iMovie. Like, was it iMovie? Because that was like the program I was using at the time. Like, this wasn't iMovie. It was way more complicated than that. Like, it had to be something else. I'd ask how someone put so much time into one video and like ask how they didn't get driven mad or lose any sort of inspiration. And then, you know, in the midst of my questioning, I got my answer by some random dude. I don't even remember the username. And the reality was that the videos I was watching weren't made by one kid or one software. In fact, it was made by, it had to be like dozens from all over the world. They were like, you know, getting together and collaborating and forming these pieces of these parts that they make, like patchwork, to create like one video that seemed seamless. And at first I was distraught, like how was something like that even possible? How do you even communicate? How, with all the language barriers and like with, you know, the distance that everyone was at, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Like, it was just insane to me. It was charming, it was confusing, and I just couldn't get enough, so I dove into it. I dove into the community, and I finally figured out what it was. And it was the concept of multiple editor projects. Now, the concept of multiple editor projects is really simple. People work together and edit these small portions of a song before posting it as a complete piece on one channel. What your part in its contents consisted of depended on what the host or yourself wanted. The world was expansive. Entire communities revolved around editing for certain video games, movies, fiction, and even the lame Flash games that I was into. There would be strict at times with color palettes and theming, but for the most part, it was a way for you to express yourself and frankly go buck wild. Some people came together to even create studios that people could audition for and get hired into based on their skills as an editor. Yes, you heard me right. Hired into. Like, they would have your name and you would basically be, you know, their little employee. It's weird. It's weird. Like kids hiring other kids. I don't know. But you didn't get money. Like, you got the ultimate reward at the time, which was recognition. People liked their part involved in bigger scale projects, you know, they liked being involved and they liked being in that big community full of other editors and used that leverage to gain subscribers. And you know, you're probably thinking as well, like, holy crap, an 8-second part, because I was thinking at the time, like, people watch only 8-second parts and just, you know, go on with their day and comment and whatever, and I'm like, that's stupid, why would anyone do that? But then I did it, and I got over like 4,000 subscribers by just getting my name out there and pumping parts like batshit crazy. Like, you would see me everywhere, dude. Like, my name would be on all of those credits, it would be on all of those time slots, it would be everywhere. And I love the idea of my little 8-second parts being the very best ones in the finished projects when there were like, I don't know, 24 of them. And sometimes I would make multiple parts for the same project just to get a leg up. Like, I would take multiple in a row just so I had a longer piece in that video. Not that it's a competition, like, it's not like anybody was getting more famous than anybody else. I mean, that's not true either. Get back to me on that. But, you know, it kind of all depended, because before anything, it came software, because software was the symbol of status in the MEP world, and you would look anywhere. Like, it was very, very obvious that everyone wanted very certain programs for very certain projects. It was practically your deciding factor where you ended up, or who you edited for, and what you edited for, and how creative you could really get. And, you know, despite not having money as a kid, you would have a chance of getting denied to join a project depending on what program you did or did not have. Of course, like, at the time, it's changed now just because there's so much new stuff out there, but After Effects was the most sought after program at the time, Adobe After Effects, and it was a lot more creative and liberating. It was like you could do anything you wanted, and it was like such a complex system that everybody sought after, even though it made a lot of people like cry half the time. I don't know why. Everybody back then was like a huge masochist. So, like, you know, obviously lots of kids would try and get After Effects. They didn't have any money, but they would still try. And they would find it for free on this sketchy website and end up, you know, getting some malware or whatever, or having their computer ship breaks and you wouldn't really know what to do with yourself to tell, you know, your mother about how you got a virus for trying to get After Effects. But I wasn't brave enough to do that, and neither was a lot of kids. So instead, what I did a lot of the time was replicate the same effects as closely as I could with other programs. For Windows kids, usually Sony Vegas Pro did the job. They had like a lot of the same keyframing stuff. It's more or less like Premiere Pro more than After Effects, but like that was the best you got. And I had a Mac, so I couldn't get Sony Vegas, but I did get Final Cut Pro. And I had to have like 24 plugins for Final Cut Pro just to make my part stand out. I got all these different transitions. I got all these different effects. I got like Magic Bullet. I mean, I know Magic Bullet doesn't make any sense to people, but it was like this super big overlay deal that made your parts a lot smoother and a lot more appealing to watch. I got one of those. Regardless, those who didn't want to pay an obscene amount would try and find free stuff with mixed results. I remember a certain program named Aquasoft that a couple people used. Like, some of my closer friends used it just because we were kind of, you know, trying to work our way up. And it was a decent program, but like every time we tried to edit, it would put this watermark right in front of it. Like, even when it would pop up for like 5 seconds and then it would go away, and then, you know, they would try and work around it, but they would still get slandered for being too poor. Like, deadass. It was awful. But, you know, like, who cares? After all, it wasn't like your rule, it was your studio's rule. And the studios themselves were very strange. They were like this glorified like clique where editors who got accepted into certain studios, quote-unquote studios, were considered celebrities or whatever the sort. And if you didn't get into any, they would just tell you to keep practicing or like even invest in new hobbies, because, you know, like, when you just start, you obviously can't get into any studios, but God forbid, you know, you work your way up and you might get accepted into a couple. And it's brutal for kids, it absolutely is, but you bet your ass I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours doing my very best to get into as many as I could. I bit off way more I could chew for a 14-year-old, and I think I maybe ended up getting into like 3 or 4. Oh my god, it was crazy. There was like this really big one at the time, Official Gold Studios, which was like this studio's just full of kids, just like uni, but for some reason that one was like really popular because they had like the most views. And I remember the rush was like different from anything else, because I remember I was in California with my brother and I was accepted into that studio as a quote-unquote guest, which wasn't really a member, but was someone who was being evaluated to see improvement. And that's more or less along the lines of, we're keeping an eye on you and we could kick you out and we could make you stay, but regardless, like, I was over the moon. I was over the moon, and it was exciting until the pressure was actually on, because, you know, like, even when you're a kid, deadlines are just as prevalent as they are now. Many deadlines would be on the same days, and if you didn't make time for yourself or make time for your part, you were met with a constant stream of messages by the host asking you where your part is. Hey, where's part 8? Hey, I need this done. Hey, did you render this yet? And if you didn't get it done, they would just replace you. They would kick you out. It didn't help that many of the time zones are really different for my community. Like, most of the editors were from like Poland, like France, Germany. they would say they needed a part done at a certain time, and it would usually be around like 6 to 7 hours earlier for me. So if they said they needed their part done by 3 p.m. at their time, I needed to finish mine up at 9 a.m. that day. Even when every time your part was late, or like, you know, when you couldn't get it done or something came up, they would give you a strike. They would follow this 3-strike rule, and if you let them down 3 times, whether it's missing a part or being late on a part or having your part come out poorly, you'd get kicked out and not be able to join any more projects. Like, you'd be banned from the studio and they would never talk to you again. Woo! That never happened to me, but sometimes it was close. I was a dirty little kid, that's for sure. You're probably thinking how on earth any of us even communicated, being so far away from each other from so many different places, but the answer is actually a lot easier, because regardless of where most people were from, everyone unanimously spoke English, mostly because it was the most universal language for everyone involved. I got accepted in a couple studios at the time, and I was worried about this, you know, I was a little nervous. I was surrounded by these, you know, mostly European people, and it's very strange because I do remember finding myself being accepted into a studio. This is one of the 4 ones I was accepted into, called French Collab, and it was solely a French studio. And how I managed to get into it, I'm not really sure, because they knew I was an American. Like, they knew I was an American editor, and I did not know a lick of French. But despite that, like, they let me in, and I couldn't understand a thing they were saying half the time, but they ended up ironically being my favorite studio to work for, mostly because they were extremely sweet to me, and they turned into some of my closest friends at the time. I still have some of them, like, tagged on my channel. I just love them so much. They were so sweet, and we just always did our best to communicate and talk even outside of our projects. We didn't use Discord or anything at the time, but instead we had like Skype, which was, you know, the before Zoom. It's mostly a defunct program today, but even now I still have it in my hotbar, and sometimes I open it. So like, going back into it is like going into a time machine where almost everything has been untouched since 2019. It's crazy because you'd see all these really amazing conversations that I've had and all these giant projects that I've been involved in, and now there's just nothing happening, and it's a little sad, but it's also kind of comforting, and I don't necessarily miss it, because sometimes I still hear like the notification sound in my sleep, like the little bubble sound. Oh, good riddance to Skype, but not good riddance to the, you know, the people that I met. I really hope that they're doing okay. I hate how much credit I have to give to these people for helping me improve my editing. The pressure of trying to adjust and adapt to the ever-growing skills of my peers kept me always practicing and researching and improving, and I was always trying to catch up, to the point of always forcing myself to learn different programs. I was really excited to get After Effects at first. I remember like shitting bricks when I got it in high school as a junior. I got my first job, and the first thing I bought with my first paycheck was a $20 monthly subscription just to After Effects. Not the whole cloud, but just After Effects. Is it worse now? Yes. I pay $30 a month now for the whole cloud. I digress, so I guess it's a better deal. It was a huge milestone for me, and at first, all I really thought about was all the new things I could do to impress my online friends, like all of the cool perspective and camera stuff I could do, and then it just turned into me being lazy and just using keyframe assistance all the time. And nowadays, with everything stacked on, the idea of trying to deal with, you know, all of that and After Effects is typical, you know, stupid nonsense is just always enough for me to get gray hair, to rip my hair out. It's still an incredibly touchy program, and it always has been, and I've lost more files on After Effects than I can count, and it's really heartbreaking, especially when you make videos like that and you put all this time into keyframing and redoing keyframes and fidgeting with the interpolation and doing all sorts of all these things, only for it to just disappear into thin air, because the recovery system has never been smart either. I still love the program, it just has its own problems, but, you know, I miss those days more than I thought, but I am really grateful for them. I'm really grateful for the community I had, and I'm really grateful to be able to explore that side of me that was, you know, something that was just a hobby, and now it's something that I'm going to school for, and it's so surreal to me. And sometimes I just wonder, as I sit here and talk to you and how I do this, like, how many other people have went into this field because of this hobby that they found, of these people, like, and I'm not even talking about editing at this point. I'm talking about animation, I'm talking about illustration, I'm talking about anything. like everything starts as something you enjoy. Writing, like tattoos, crafting, like, you know, you think of it and you just see it and you just get inspired as a kid, and then you just start working on these things. And isn't that what like having a dream job is all about? It's like something you've always fantasized over, and now here I am. And it all started because I played Movie Star Planet. That's just crazy to me. So sorry that you had to hear my rambling, but I guess that's what happens when you really love something and you can just talk about it for hours. And that's why I'm here.